Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me, as always, is the one, the only Will. Will, may I just say, Happy Star Wars Day?
Happy actual Star Wars Day. Thank you. Good
Yes,
memory.
Happy
Us
Star Wars Day.
old guys, what is this old May the 4th thing? 45 years ago, no one was talking about May the 4th. They were talking about, oh my God, did you just see what I just saw? Holy cow.
Yes,
Let's get right
yes.
back in line and watch it again. Star Wars premiered in movie theaters in 1977, 45 years ago on this date, May 25th.
And on this
And
date, May 25th, I was still inside my mama's belly.
okay, I was not.
I,
That would have been
I had
gross.
not been born yet. I was going to be born,
Now,
but I had not been born yet.
I love how a lot of people say, I was there, man. I saw it on the day one. I was there. Okay, well, that's got to be, most people who say that are lying because it only opened in 32 theaters.
Yeah.
Okay, it didn't really take off. I mean, it was very popular in those 32 theaters, but it didn't really start to take off until weeks later when it got once people realized what was going on.
Yeah.
It got the mass amounts of prints and it went into all the theaters. I mean, I don't know for sure. I was only 6 years old when it came out, so I'm guessing that I saw it probably in June or July, and I'm guessing. And yeah, that was life-changing experience for me, of course. So
Yeah.
um, and a life-changing experience for many, many, many other people. In fact, it's become such a part. And we were talking about Star Wars and pop culture and the culture, the
Yeah.
cultural zeitgeist of Star Wars, that it has become something that is celebrated and lauded year after year, and in what is now known our Star Wars
This
celebrations.
celebration, yes, happening
And
tomorrow.
yes, tomorrow begins Celebration Anaheim. I think they're calling it Anaheim. I don't know exactly, but I think it says Star Wars
Star
Celebration
Wars
Anaheim
celebration.
2.
The website, the official website, just says Anaheim 2022 Star Wars celebration.
Okay, so I mean, I think what they're really basically doing now is, they used to call it Celebration 1, Celebration 2, Celebration 3, but they have since, just because they keep going, they're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
They tried going to other places. So anyway, so I thought today would be a great, might be a good, fun time to kind of talk about the history of Star Wars Celebration, or
Mm.
the way Star Wars conventions kind of came into play, came into being.
Hmm.
And there have been sci-fi conventions, probably most notably Star Trek conventions, and I
Yes.
remember going to quite a few of those when I was younger. It was my first time walking into a space. And remember, kids, no internet. Your first time you walk in, the only place you have to share your knowledge of and love of anything sci-fi is to look through the Starlog magazine. And but there were these places that you could go, usually in big cities, and there would be not celebrations. They just called them, science fiction convention. I know Creation was a company that did a
Mm.
lot of Star Trek conventions, and that was the first thing I went to. And I saw Star Trek people there, and I saw from actors from TV shows, and a ton of people selling toys. And it was my first experience. I was past the Star Wars time, like in the early 90s, and it was my first experience seeing people selling like all Star Wars toys, like vintage Star Wars toys. And, at that time they weren't that expensive because they weren't that old, but it was incredible. And I actually was able to continue stuff in I knew what I had, I knew what I needed, and I found stuff, and I was able to save up allowance money and do stuff, and it was fun. But it wasn't Star Wars. The Star Wars convention, there were two things that were going on prior to celebrations. In 1987, Starlog magazine hosted it says Starlog Salute Star Wars, and it was a 10th anniversary convention. It was a 10th anniversary tribute to George Lucas and a galaxy far, far away, which he created. It was at the Stofert Concourse Hotel in Los Angeles, California, and it was May 23rd to May 25th. So here we are, uh, 35 years later, or 90 or something like that.
Yeah.
And again, organized by both Starlog magazine and Creation Conventions. And the interesting piece of trivia about this is that it was not only attended by George Lucas, but there was another surprise guest, and that Gene Roddenberry attended.
Hmm.
And this resulted in the only known photograph of George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry being taken together by longtime Star Wars fan and founder of the Insider magazine, Dan Madsen. So
Wow.
yeah, so that was pretty cool. I did not attend that, but it sounded like it was really cool. I remember seeing pictures of what people were doing. It was a very early time,
Oh yeah.
um, early types of cosplay, nobody doing droid building at that point. Just a very different time. Then there was something a little more small, more intimate called Men. You ever heard of the Men Behind the Mask tour?
I have not.
Okay, so these were just basically local, smaller events. Maybe instead of having 20, 30, 40,000 people, they might have only had maybe 5,000 or 10, 2,500 to 5,000. So they were much more intimate.
Mm.
And there were these things where they brought in all the actors from from the Star Wars films that were masked. They brought in Anthony Daniels, Jeremy Bullock, Peter Mayhew, Warwick Davis, a few others, or Kenny Baker. And it was very easy to get in line and talk with them and have conversations. So much different than what's going on later and what's going on now. And my friend and I did go to one, and I think it was Parsippany, New Jersey. We went, and it was great. We had a fun time. We took pictures with them all, and it was just a grand old time. And it wasn't crazy. There wasn't like crazy wait. The only one that was a crazy wait was Anthony Daniels, and that was like an hour. So it wasn't like crazy. Just it wasn't all day. But then we fast forward. That was in the mid '90s, and then we fast forward to what they dubbed Star Wars Celebration. And again, that Dan Madsen character that I mentioned a while back, he was very instrumental in getting this. He was the head of the official Star Wars fan club, and they held this at the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum in Denver, Colorado.
Mm.
And it was to celebrate, it was in 99, and it was to celebrate the return of Star Wars with Star Wars The Phantom Menace. And the only thing I can tell you about this, I didn't go. I'm kind of happy I didn't go
Mm.
because it was a much more of an outdoor event than an indoor event. And they learned their lesson because they had a record amount of rain.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare from what
Outdoor
people,
events are never
never
no
fun.
matter what you're doing, outdoor events, they sound fun, but unless you have a backup plan.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, tents, and let me tell you something about tents. Tents are great, even like circus tents are great, but they don't fully protect you. They just don't. And that's what a lot of people discovered. So so they learned their lesson, but there was a lot of hype over the Phantom Menace coming out. So everybody who went there, they still had a wonderful time. And fast forward to May of 2002, Celebration 2 was held, and this time it was held in Indianapolis, Indiana, to make use of the actual Indiana Convention Center. There you go, a nice indoor space. And it was a 3-day event, and it was basically there was like something like 75,000 people that attended. That's crazy amount. They were not expecting that. They were expecting a far smaller amount. So there was a cool. They included a 25th anniversary Star Wars concert on Saturday night, performed by the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. So really cool stuff. And then now they were getting their sea legs, and they were starting to figure out how to do this. Celebration 3. Again, you can imagine this was opening up for episode 3 in April of 2005, Revenge of the Sith. And it was a 4-day event, and it included a rare appearance by the maker himself, George Lucas, who shied away from fan events, and he actually came out and I remember I'll do a little confession. There were people waiting. The one big issue with them is that they really weren't doing. It was run by Gen Con, and they really
Okay.
were not doing a very good job of maintaining lines. They had very untrained people running it. It was just I mean, I was there for this one, and I went with my friend, and we stayed there. You know, it was again in Indianapolis. It just there was so many issues with lines for the panels. There were people that were just waiting and waiting all night, and they didn't have to be. You know, they had so many people that they could fit. I mean, my friend and I happened to be walking past, and we literally got grabbed to go. You know, you're here for this, right? And we didn't like, I don't know. So like they grabbed us and they pushed us in, and we found ourselves in a line, and it was at the front of the line, and there it was, George Lucas, his
Whoa.
uh, his thing. We were like, okay, but there were still empty seats when we sat down, and there were seats around us, so it was very poorly managed.
Yeah.
And they've since been able to fix that. But I did know this. I did know that Lucasfilm actually sued Gen Con for
Wow.
breach of contract in the way they handled it, and they actually went out of business from there. So don't mess with Lucasfilm.
Wow.
But the Q&A with George Lucas was fantastic.
Oh,
So,
I'll bet.
and then we have Celebration 4, which now we're getting into some different times because no more movies at this point. All right, so 2006. This was in Los Angeles at Los Angeles Convention Center in around this time, like late May, and there was. It was getting much more creative. There was a lot more interesting stuff coming out. The big thing that was coming out at this point that they could talk about was the Family Guy and the Robot Chicken spoofs. So there was a lot of interest in it. It was fun.
Oh yeah.
And then we have. I apologize. That was not the Celebration 3 wasn't the one that Lucasfilm sued Gen Con. That was Celebration 4. My bad.
Oh.
And they decided to go around and do some stuff in other countries. They had Celebration Europe in 2000. Was it 2007? Yeah, 2007, which took place in Germany. Oh no, it took place in Earl's Court, London. And then they had a Celebration Japan, which took place in let's see if I can say this right. The Makuhari Messe Convention Center near Tokyo in July of 2008. All right, or no, 2009, I think. So, and now by this time, or no, it was 2008, excuse me. And then by this time, we were dealing with the Clone Wars. So there was a lot of interest in that, a lot of hype in that. And then they moved on to Celebration 5 in 2000, July of 2008, I think it was. Oh, no, 2010, excuse me. And that one took place in Orlando. That was the last one I attended. And that was fun because it was in Orlando. It was near Disney World. Disney did not own Lucasfilm yet, but there has always been a really strong partnership. So Disney World got in on the act, and Hollywood Studios had this. They were getting ready to close the Star Tours ride, so they had this last tour of Endor, real fun party that you could go into. It's like a hard ticket event. They had Star Wars fireworks and characters running around, and the most awesome show you could ever want to see. There's an attraction down in Hollywood Studios, John, called Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. Basically a stunt show. Well, they used it and called it. I think I mentioned this to you in a way previous episode because we talked about Star Wars and Disney that one time, and it was called Raiders of the Lost Jedi Temple of Doom. And it was basically this story about they made a story about these two fans that made fan films. One made it a Star Wars one, and one made an indie one, and they essentially they both got picked to do it, so they had to mash up their movies together. So it was basically Indiana Jones running around with Han Solo and all these other characters, and it was back and forth. It was pretty funny.
Nice.
So, and George Lucas attended the event, so that was kind of fun. And they were getting their groove. They had Celebration 6, which was which was in again in Orlando, Florida. Celebration Europe 2, which was actually, I think it was in Essen, Germany. Celebration Anaheim, the first, I guess, Celebration Anaheim, because it was in Anaheim Convention Center. That was in 2015, and that's when we started, celebrating the Force Awakens, and the hype that was going on. And now things started actually getting broadcast. It was the first time that there was actually a live stream broadcast on the Star Wars channel on YouTube, and you could literally watch if you weren't there, which I wasn't, but I could watch, and it wasn't just watching like a highlight reel. It was literally 8 hours of continuous stream. They would actually get you into the panels to watch some of the panels. They would talk about some of the product available. It was incredible, and you can still watch a lot of those if you go back on if you go into YouTube and you type in the search for it, like Star Wars live stream celebration or whatever, you'll find a bunch of old ones. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're really, really good, and they're doing it again. I'm excited. They're doing it starting tomorrow. Problem is that it's in LA, or sorry, it's in Anaheim, so that's a 3 hour.
Yeah, the time different. Yeah,
so that means I'm going to be watching it from like 3 till like 11, but it's all right. So there was another Celebration Europe in London, England. Another celebration in Orlando. Came out in the 2017, and then the last one, Celebration Chicago, which was in 2019. They were planning on Anaheim for the 2020, and of course with the COVID, and they decided not to do it, and they postponed it until tomorrow. So that is a brief history, a 16-minute history of Star Wars Celebrations.
Yes.
I want to talk about what goes on at these events, because if you're somebody who's thinking about doing it, I can tell you, everyone should. If you are a Star Wars fan, even a like mild to serious Star Wars fan, you should go to at least one. You should make the pilgrimage to a Star Wars celebration. I will say, it is quite. We were just talking off air. It is an expensive proposition if you have to travel. All right, because it does take. If you're going into a city usually, and it's gonna, and the airlines know that there is an event going on. They're not going to be cheap.
Yeah.
So you got to fly to get there sometimes, and you have to stay in a hotel. You can't sleep you can't sleep in a box under a bridge. You have to sleep in a hotel. So that's like several thousands of dollars just to go there, and you haven't even done the convention yet. But the convention itself is made up of so many different things. It has panels. The panels talk about collecting, or they talk about the main stage where stuff that's coming out, new movies, new TV shows. They bring out the actors, the cast members, the creators who focus and talk about how they made these awesome films and TV shows. They do costume contests. They have vendor product reveals. They have character and story element, stories and things that and discussions. They have like podcasters like us go out there and like kind of host, programs with other podcasters. They bring in a lot of behind the scenes people. They talk about comics. They talk about gaming. They talk about TV and film and magazine advertising. I mean, it's crazy amounts of stuff. They have an R2D2 builders room. John Mark, have you ever been to an R2D2 builders room?
I have not been to an R2D2's builders room.
All right. The builders room is an amazing place. You walk into that thing and you're going to see no less than 50 or more R2 units, all different shapes and sizes and colors.
Wow.
All different R2 units, R5 units, all working as if you stepped into Star Wars. A lot of them, they have them in pieces so you can see how they made them. Such an amazing, amazing thing. And then there's the 501st. I mean, you think it's cool to see someone dressed as a stormtrooper, but imagine seeing somebody dressed as, 1,000 people dressed as stormtroopers, all posing on a staircase for a picture. It's scary. It's darn right intimidating, but it's so cool.
Oh yeah.
And the way they there's dirty troopers and clean troopers, there's clone troopers, there's death troopers, there's every kind of trooper. And the minute the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett comes out with a new type of armor, you can bet that armor is going to be out there. There are Sith troopers. It's almost sensory overload.
Oh.
In fact, it is sensory overload, frankly. But I know I'm going on here. There's also the Works, which is the Mandalorian costuming club, the Rebel Legion, which does more of the heroes. There are saber guilds where you can actually buy like, fan-made different types of sabers, but then you can also do saber training which is almost like a form of an aerobic activity. So that's crazy what you can do. They have cool charity auctions. There was one of the celebrations I went to. This was amazing. There was two types of auctions I can tell you about. One, I think it was either Don Post or another company had sent out 50 Vader movie accurate Vader helmets to artisans from all around. And these artists doctored them up and made them look kind of different and weird, and they painted them different colors. And then they became these artistic pieces that they auctioned off to raise money for a charity. So people would go in and look at the different ones and they would put a bid on them. And they sold them all, and they all sold for crazy amounts of money, and it was fun. The other one that was really incredible was that Lucasfilm Archives had found in their storage a huge crate filled with all basically samples of all of the vintage Star Wars 70s and 80s box, toys and action figures.
Wow.
Untouched, mint condition since the 70s. And they decided rather than to keep them, they gave them to Celebration to set up as an auction. I mean, and it was, and I tried. I was in the bidding for a couple of things, and I tried, but then it just got into once it started getting out of the $100 and into the 500s and the thousands and the 1500s.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
you're gonna, yeah. I'd be the same way. Like, I'm tapping out here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the swag. Swag meaning stuff we all get. You go to any kind of convention, there's usually booths and tables everywhere. And those booths can be manned or unmanned, and you can walk up and there's stacks of different little things. A lot of them are just cards, like little advertisements for an upcoming movie or something, but you can find some pretty cool stuff. So I have some samples here. So people that are watching or rewatching, you can check these out. So, we have things like, this is my Star Wars Celebration lanyard that has the badge. You can see if I can get this lined up right. 4-day adult ticket. That's my Boba Fett. But then there were these other things, this is I was at the Force Cast fan party at Celebration 5.
Nice.
So that was one thing. And then I got a little lanyard for that. And then I also went to, there's another Force Cast. This is when the Force Cast was Jimmy Mack and Jason Swank. They're now on part of Rebel Force Radio. They've kind of moved on. You get little bags and things like this. There's Jedi Temple Archives had this really cool Star Wars Celebration 4. You can see
awesome
art. There's a lot of this stuff I've actually gotten rid of because there's not enough room. Here's Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017. Oh, this one I didn't go to, but I did. I ended up buying a swag bag, but I liked the metal. It was the lanyard, but it had that looks like the
metal.
Yes, I thought that was clever. So
nice.
I ended up picking that up on eBay. Then we have this little cool. This was like samples of things like you could get. It's I think this might have been, I can't remember if this was swag or if this was like a sample. I couldn't remember, but it was just like a pin. And speaking of pins and things of that nature, there was a really cool what they called a collecting track, and it was a collecting panel. So it was a one room that had a collecting panel, and there would be different panels. It could be a panel about Star Wars advertising, a panel about Star Wars Kenner toys, a panel about lunchboxes, a panel about cereal. And what happened was, though, if you attended those panels, you got one free collectible item. And you could, if you tried hard enough, and all you did was go to collecting panels for the 4 days, you could actually attend upwards to like 20 to 30 different panels and collect 20 to different 30 things, and you would get this complete set. Here's an example of something that there was a lot of. I'm trying to think of when this was. Oh yeah, Star Wars Celebration 6. Okay, this was a thing called. Have you ever heard of Star Tots?
No, I have not heard of Star Tots.
Okay, here's the story behind Star Tots.
Okay.
Star Tots were essentially a prototyped item they were going to be these little kind of almost Weebles or Fisher Price style figure that Kenner was going to produce. But it ended up getting shot down and he didn't do it. So as part of this collecting panel, somebody designed these little metal, and they're not really pins, they're really just metal, characters. They're thin, and they put them on these star tots, like same racing stripe thing. Collect all, I guess it was 20 of them. So they created a whole bunch, and I've been able to acquire a good number of them. Although I will tell you that they did them for 2 different celebrations. Here's Vader. I'm not going to show them all, but I got a whole bunch just sitting here in the office. And people would really, they were really well done. His blue snaggletooth. The collectors love the idea. So,
oh yeah,
that is a great swag piece. And then what I started doing was I actually would collect a lot of the ephemera from these different panels and booths and stuff, and I would just kind of put them together in a notebook. So I did that. I actually got this. This is Celebration 4, but this is what I collected this. This is what the card art looked like from Hasbro. So the Hasbro booth was giving out these cards because this is what the action figures came in, and then you go through it, and like here's an example. There's another thing here. If you see this, see the coin there in the middle?
Oh yeah,
that pewter coin.
Mm-hmm.
It's upside down, but that was another collecting track item from this year, from this celebration. So every time you went into it, and I only collected like 1 or 2 of them. But now to try to complete those collections, if you try to get all the Star Tots from the Celebration 6 or all of the coins from Celebration 4, it's like $1,000. It's a pretty crazy amount. And here's some more badges. It's some different from my daughter went with me, so I had a 1 child badge and 1 adult badge. So I mean, all the stuff that you can get from these things is really fun and collectible. I also put some autographs on here. And took some photos with my daughter. Here we got little Jake Lloyd, and then I took some photos, and there's Jake Lloyd at the bottom there with my daughter.
Nice.
So some artists. Cynthia Cummins was an artist that we met. So there's really cool things. They had really cool magazines. Here's the Celebration 3 magazine. How cool. How appropriate is that now?
Oh, that's awesome.
And
so
then,
awesome.
And the piece de resistance, they often would have action figures. And this was from Star Wars Celebration 3. And there was, now see if we can hear it.
Your journey to the dark side is now complete.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
He said a bunch of stuff.
Prepare to experience the revenge of the Sith. It is your destiny.
And they brought James Earl Jones back to.
I was about to say that sounds like James. That sounds like James.
It is James Earl Jones, my friend. And you know what? Now that was another kind of like a pain about Star Wars Celebrations. I don't know if I think they've helped with that a little bit. The store that, obviously there's vendors all throughout. There's a vendor room and there's hundreds of vendors. But there's also a store, a dedicated Star Wars Celebration 3 store. And they sell like all sorts of nifty product, from t-shirts and hats and, all the standard stuff. But they also usually have a sponsored action figure exclusive. So a lot of people go in and try to buy it.
Yeah.
I remember for that one, I know that I was told that it was the previous years they had sold out really quickly of the figures, and they said this time they had saturated the market. But I knew that some people would want them, so I ended up buying 10. I bought 2 for myself, and then I bought the other 8, and I put them on eBay. But here's the thing: I put them on at the amount I paid. I didn't care about making money.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I meant, if I put it out there for $20, which is how much it cost, the most anybody would pay for it was like, $35 or something. But at the end of the day, I ended up paying for the figures I bought, and the figures that were mine. So I was like, okay, that works. And everybody else was happy because they got the figure. So just so much fun. And although you do end up, eyes can be bigger than your stomach and your wallet here.
Oh, I'm
because,
sure. I'm sure.
there's so much. I mean, another thing that's really popular in cons is not just Star Wars, but everywhere. They have a thing called Artist Alley. And Artist Alley is where all these different artists go in and they sell their wares, and all different types of art. It could be paintings, it could be prints, it could be sculptures, and they can all be Star Wars. And a lot of them work out deals with Lucasfilm they allow them to utilize the images and sell them. And some people do commissions right then and there. It's a pretty crazy thing. And it's not like any other con. I mean, you have to apply to be a member of Artist Alley, so it's got to be people that are very well represented, well skilled artists.
Mm.
And my daughter was up and as you know, she's an artist, professional artist now, and she was an up and comer, learning as she's only at that time 10 years old, but she was still very actively drawing. And we would take some of her drawings to the artist and they would give her little mini critiques. She got her first portfolio review at Star Wars Celebration. So it was and she
cool.
They were awesome, and they gave her some I went out looking for female artists, try to get her to something she could relate to, and they were awesome. They could not have been more supportive, nicer. It was fantastic. So now, if going into the Star Wars Celebration, spending the day there is not enough for you. If you've gotten to the end of the day and you're just too wound up and wired to just go back to your whole hotel room, because remember, most celebration days, they usually end around 5-6 o'clock. They don't end like really late.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Well, don't worry, because there are dozens and dozens of after parties. And even back in the day, I mean, it was the 501st, they'd have an after party, and Rebel Force Radio, or then Forcecast, would have an after party. But a lot of places the fan club had an after party. I'll tell you one. I mean, when Rebel Force Radio at the time, Forcecast, they had one of them. I think it was the last one I went to. It was in Florida, and the entire cast of Clone Wars was there, including the director and supervising animator Dave Filoni.
Wow.
And it wasn't like, line up and take a selfie with him and get an autograph. It was like, let's buy a drink, let's have a seat, and let's chat. And that's what it was like. And he was talking about, it was sitting at the foot of the master, or the foot of the next guy in line to the foot of the master.
The foot of the Padawan.
Yeah, foot of the Padawan, who's going to eventually be the master. But to think about, now and how different it is now, it was amazing. And just be able to talk with these people as human beings, and they loved it, especially the older guys. The old guys were, the guys from like Empire and Jedi that were playing like, the Jabba's henchmen and whatever. They were having a grand old time, because these people, all these strangers, are buying them drinks, and they're like, "I'm okay,
all right." I never turned down I don't know about you, but I won't turn down a free drink.
I mean, Jeremy Bullock, man. I mean, he was the nicest guy, and he always will sit and talk to you and listen to you and tell you fun stories, and it was great.
Nice.
So the after parties were phenomenal, and then a lot of times they came with, and there were trivia contests. And I'll tell you another fun story. I might have told this one already, but there was one panel when I was trying to go to those collector track panels that I was mentioning. I went to the room and I went into a panel, but it was a Star Wars licensing panel. It wasn't part of the collecting panel. So I'm like, oh man, that's not what I want, because I'm not going to get the free coin. So I was getting ready to leave, but then they started talking, and I'm like, oh, these guys are all people from Hasbro, people from Sideshow, people from Gentle Giant, Kotobukiya, and they're all talking about product that they're going to have coming out at the celebration that I was at. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So I sat and listened, and it was about a 50-minute panel. Well, around 40 minutes in, he said, okay, guys, we're going to start giving stuff away. So I'm like, ooh, this sounds interesting. But we're going to have to do some trivia first. So I'm like, okay, trivia. Now, mind you, there's 500 people in this room. This is Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah.
So he asks the first question. And he says, and I honestly, and I'm going to be honest with you, I honestly believe that people were like, I mean, people were just getting into like really having the smartphones. So I think people were just checking their phones. They just weren't paying attention. And he said the question was, what is the number of Princess Leia's cell block? Now, that much time went by. I looked to my left. I looked to my right. I'm like, I think I know this. So I raised my hand. In a room full of 500 Star Wars fans, no one was answering. So I raised my hand and I said, well, I went through the whole thing just to make sure. I didn't know if it was what exactly they wanted. So I just said the whole thing. I said, level 5, detention block AA23, cell block 2187. And they went, you're right. And you win a prop replica of a Stormtrooper helmet. I was like, came out in a box this big.
Oh,
And everybody else was like, what? I thought they were going to give out like patches, And
Yeah.
I was like, oh. So I'm walking away. I call my wife. I'm like, you're never going to believe what I just won. I won a Stormtrooper helmet, like movie accurate stunt prop. It was great. But I had to ship that thing home.
Oh,
But that was another thing. They even provided shipping. They thought of everything. You go to there was a little American or FedEx wing, and you could walk in and you could just put all your stuff there, and then they would just put it in huge boxes and ship it out. We paid for it, but they would ship it out for you. Oh,
yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so
smart.
then you didn't have to worry about traveling with it if you're flying, because, yeah. So, it is something that I miss. I wish I could go every time. I applaud those who do. I will say though that in a great substitute is, like I said, the Star Wars show live stream that takes place. You go on YouTube, you just type in Star Wars, one word, and you'll find their channel, and it'll be up there. It's usually powered by Verizon or powered by Geico. It's like a big company that helps sponsor it. But it is literally a non-stop stream that goes. And what happens is, like, they actually, it's hosted by Andy Gutierrez and Anthony Carboni. And these are two very popular, YouTubers, YouTube, hosts and things of that nature. I believe Andy still works for Lucasfilm, but I think Anthony might have bopped. He bops around a lot, but they're really, really well done. They're well versed in Star Wars. They understand it, and it's a combination of a lot of different things. They will show, like as I said, they'll go to a panel, and you'll be watching a panel that everybody else is sitting in that maybe they waited in line for, and you'll be watching that panel there, and it's incredible. And then they'll go back to their main stage where they're hosting, and they'll bring on people there to have interviews with, and they do little activities and play little games, and they pan across the convention floor, and you see the thousands of people there. And for some people, it's like, it is so cool that they're doing this on YouTube because I really don't want to be there in person.
Yeah.
And especially now with COVID still being around, that would be hard.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I fully intend to watch. And the nice thing too is that, you spend a lot less money.
Yeah.
Most of the companies that have that are releasing items, they generally they hold a lot of stuff to be released to the general public via online, on the next day.
Yeah.
So it's really not bad. And if it's just something exclusive, well, the scalpers are going to be out there, and they're going to buy their, I think they announced there's a Jon Favreau action figure. It's Jon Favreau I believe he played the Mandalorian, the heavyset one.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. It's Vizsla, right? Yeah, Vizsla.
Vizsla.
And something Vizsla. And they have one with him without his helmet on, so you see the Jon Favreau face. And but that's something, you go on eBay, and it's probably twice as much usually of what you would have paid there, but who cares? I mean, you didn't spend $3,000 to fly and land and stay in Anaheim. So if you really want it, that's a good way to get it. So it's always nice to kind of look at it in that sense instead of being overwhelmed. So I recommend the Star Wars Celebration Live. It's the Star Wars Show Celebration live stream, and it's going to be on starting around 3:00 Eastern Standard, maybe 2:00 your time, all day tomorrow, all afternoon tomorrow, all afternoon Friday, all afternoon Saturday, and all afternoon Sunday. And I have no plans this weekend, so I'm excited.
Oh wow. I do have, unfortunately I have to work, so I will be catching bits and pieces when I can.
You can watch it
Looking.
on. You can watch a rewatch. When
Yeah,
you're, which
yeah,
is nice too that they let you do that. So
yeah. But there's a few. I looked through some of the guest lists, and there's a few guests that look interesting. There was one in particular that I am really interested in to see, just because of the backlash that this person got. That is Kelly Marie Tran will
oh, I
be,
know that. I mean, I'm sorry.
and
That's
but just that. I mean, I think that's cool that they're
yeah.
bringing her back, and I hope that she gets the response and the respect that she deserves, whether
There's
you like the character or not.
well, here's the
Um,
deal. At a Star Wars celebration, yes, she will get all the accolades, all of the act. I mean, Ahmed Best was at the last one. I mean
mm,
and he it was a superstar at the last one. And
yeah,
that just shows you that, I'm sorry, but the hate that comes out sometimes. I mean, look, there's okay, there's legitimate complaints or gripes about story, about special effects, about fill in the blank. Things specifically about the movie or movies or whatever that some people that just don't resonate with people and they need to vent that their frustration that it doesn't resonate with them. But those are not the people that generally, hate on Kelly Marie Tran. Those aren't the people who hate on Ahmed Best or Jake Lloyd. Poor Jake Lloyd. I mean, come on. The kid was 8. I mean,
yeah,
those are not those people. I'm talking about the other people, the haters. And I have no place for them
mhm,
because that's just, there is I believe, this is just my belief, you can disagree. But I believe that there is a fundamental problem that person who's a hater is suffering from, that they have to tear somebody else down,
yeah,
or that they have a misguided, I think, thought that these people are somehow, superhuman rich entitled snobs that aren't that somehow deserve to be torn down
yeah.
when
Well,
all
and
they did
people,
was audition for, get accepted to, and
yeah,
act in a movie.
yeah, and it's one thing to say, like, criticism is okay to a point. To say, I, I didn't like the way this character,
Yeah,
I didn't like this character, or even to say, hey, I'm sure she's a wonderful person, or this person's a wonderful person, but I didn't really like the way this person did this role or performed this role. It's one thing to criticize, but when you're just being mean and malicious about it,
that's what
that's
I mean. That's a
yeah,
hater. That's what I'm exactly what I think.
yeah,
So I look forward to seeing them talk to Kelly Marie Tran. I mean, you got to remember, Kelly's also had a little more success. She's Raya and the Last Dragon, so there's
yeah,
definitely she's got some
yeah,
some cred. So yeah, I'm just looking through some of my other swag. I mean, most of them are just photos and things. But I just laugh because there's so many things. Like there were just so many. Like I remember when I found a little card with advanced graphics lifestyle stand-ups. I mean, here we have, somebody, just an advertisement right there at the bottom for those life-size cardboard standees, and I was just like, oh my god. And somebody was passing those out, and it just was so much fun. But and then of course, they had a lot of autographs. I mean, it was great because they literally had like 50 with the last, most celebrations there'll be 50 plus, maybe even 100. I mean, like literally dozens and dozens of actors and excuse me, actors and puppeteers and the people. I got an autograph from Jabba the Hutt's right hand as well as Jabba the Hutt's left hand. I got an autograph from the original Max Rebo, and it's a cool thing, and one with, again, my another fun thing with my daughter. She would, when she came with me on the one the one thing, she would do drawings of the characters. And I remember Tim Rose. Tim Rose was the gentleman who was the puppeteer for Admiral Akbar originally.
mm,
And actually, I think he did it for The Force Awakens and Last Jedi as well. They brought him back for that. But he was also the puppeteer for Salacious Crumb.
Oh,
the little
yes.
monkey lizard. And my daughter brought him. What we did was she did some drawings. I mean, they were young, sketches,
Yeah.
but she still did a pretty decent job. And she did a sketch of Admiral Akbar. So we made a color copy of it, and we had him autograph one for us, and we gave him the other one. So he was like, "Oh, this is cool!" And he actually went down behind him, and there was a big poster of him as the Admiral Akbar and his name, and he just pinned it right next to it.
Oh.
So cartoon. Well, the funniest thing is if you go to Tim Rose's website. This was like 15 years ago. You go to the website and he still has that picture of just him, like later, like posing in front of the poster from Celebration. But the little picture of my daughter did is next to it. I was like, hey, he kept it. That's cool that he uses that. So the those quote unquote B or C or D list celebrities that are there are very approachable, nice, wonderful to talk to. And generally, I mean, obviously they could be tired and you got to be careful. You got to kind of, feel the vibe, if you will, but they're generally so great. I remember I took the voice, when I went, the last one I went to, the voice cast for the Clone Wars, Jonathan, my God, James Arnold Taylor, not Jonathan, James Arnold Taylor, who's voice of Obi-Wan. Matt Lantern, voice of Anakin. Ashley Eckstein, voice of Ahsoka. D. Bradley Baker, the voice of all the clones. Tom Kane, the voice of Yoda and the narrator. And Matt Wood, who is the voice of General Grievous and the battle droids. And I would go up to them, and I would. My wife was teaching in an elementary school, and she was a tech teacher, and she did morning announcements, kind of like a podcast, or she would do they called it Cubcast because they were the Cubs or whatever, and she would do a Cubcast with two kids that are going to do the morning announcements. So I asked them if they would. I went up to these actors, these voice actors, and I said, "Could you read copy for me?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, sure." Well, and I explained my wife's Cubcast, and I think the kids all loved Clone Wars, and then to hear Obi-Wan Kenobi like lead in would be amazing. So James Arnold Taylor, I took my little voice recorder, and he was like, "This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to the Orchard Hill Morning Cubcast," and they all did that. Everyone except Ashley Eckstein, because I couldn't get to her. She was she was just starting her universe, and it was too hard to get a hold of her. But the rest of them were a little more quieter, and I was able to do that, and they were so nice, and we still have them. She just retired, but I said, don't, make sure you still keep those, because those are fun,
Yeah.
So it was that was those little things, those little stories that I told, they mean so much. And I do want to get back there again, and I will. I mean, we know they'll be back in Orlando. I wonder if they'll ever do in New York. I honestly think they won't, only because I think that they think their thought process is, all right, you got Florida, East Coast, you got Anaheim, West Coast, because they're both near the Disney parks.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier for them to do synergistic things. Now we have Galaxy's Edge in both places. So there's a lot of options there.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And if you're going to have a third, it makes sense to do it smack in the middle, Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago. Yeah, even
Indianapolis.
I think Indy and St. Louis, because I know that they have the big empty football stadium in St. Louis that's being used. I can't think what that's called now, but St. Louis could handle it too.
Right.
But
so I think that I have a feeling, and of course then we got to hear, are they going to go to Europe? Are they going to do it there? It's like, oh. Now the thing about Europe, and that's a bucket list thing, because man, there have been Star Wars conventions, not Celebration, but Star Wars conventions in Germany. JediCon has gone on for years, and man, they know how to do it. They know how to do it, man. They know how to do a convention. But the other thing in Star Wars, but it's not an official thing. But the other thing that happens in Celebrations that's great is there's this Belgian group that builds life-size set pieces, ships, huge, like gigantic, full-out set pieces. You could go in there and get a picture with Jabba the Hutt. You can go in there and get a picture on a speeder bike in front of the blockade or in front of the bunker. You can get a shot in Hoth, like down the corridor. You can
Mhm.
you can get a photo underneath a full size X-wing or TIE fighter. They
Wow.
build these things, and I'm like, how the heck do they get them here? And I remember them being on the Star Wars show. They interviewed the guy who runs it, and he said you got to plan it. You got to build it like a way in advance, and then you got to
Oh
put it on
yeah.
a shipping container and ship it to the harbor. Then they got to arrange to go pick it up. It is not easy stuff, man, but they do it.
Yeah.
So celebration, man. Get to one when as soon as you can. I hope
Well, bucket list for me definitely to get to one. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future we can actually do a Star Wars War of the Stars podcast live from Star Wars
yeah,
Celebration.
I want to apply for the podcast stage, and
I
do that.
tried 2020. I tried, but wasn't accepted at the
Oh,
time. Weren't like a big, not 2020, but the Chicago
2019.
one, 2019, and at the time, you know, weren't big enough and didn't even get a response from them. So, but maybe next one will be big enough and we can get.
Yeah, you just got to keep trying.
Got to keep trying. Got to keep
So
trying.
that's all. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So thanks for
Uh,
giving me the floor on this one
oh,
today.
not a
I was
problem,
really
man. Not a
excited.
problem, man. We will be because I looked and it looks like we got some um what's being planned for this Star Wars celebration is a lot of first looks with the Andor series getting a first look and the Ahsoka series,
Nice.
Visions is Star Wars Visions is coming back. So I am going to try and do some reactions to those, looking at those, and
Yep.
kind of see what that's all about. We'll let you know. And of course, next week it's going to be all Obi-Wan as the Obi-Wan
Aha.
Disney Plus series drops with episodes 1 and 2 on is it tomorrow or the 27th?
27th.
27th. So episodes 1 and 2 will drop on the 27th, and that Wednesday coming up that week, we will be giving you our thoughts and review of Obi-Wan Kenobi episodes 1 and 2.
All right. Can't wait.
So, well, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at, Will?
Okay, well, I'm when I'm not hanging out here, I have my YouTube channel, Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing Show on YouTube. You can just do a search for Darth Tuba, and you should find it. And you can also see me on Instagram and Twitter at Darth Tuba, the Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing page on Facebook. And you can email me, darthtuba77@gmail.com. And I look forward to, we got a lot of fun episodes. I've been really busy at my day job, so there's been a lot of shipments coming in from things that I've ordered like a year ago, and the places I ordered from, they ship them one at a time, so I've got like 10 things to unbox, but I don't like to do them all at once. I like to do like 2 or 3 at a time. So there's a bunch of those coming up, and I'm looking forward to it. So, but I am very much looking forward to talking about Obi-Wan and maybe post celebration and see what other reveals there were. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, as for us right here, if you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at warofthestars1@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at warofthestars1. Those are the best places to get a hold of us. Also, you can check out our Facebook group. Just search War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. You can check out the Star Wars group and the Facebook group and the Facebook page, both under that name. If you want to support the show, there's a few ways you can do that. First of all, the easiest way is just go to our Anchor page, anchor.fm/War of the Stars, and then just click the support tab right there, and you can support us that way. Or you can go to patreon.com/War of the Stars and support us that way. Or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop. Easiest way to do that is just go to spreadshirt.com, and then in the search bars type War of the Stars. That's probably going to be easier than typing out the whole shop.com, blah, whatever.
Right.
And of course, we are also a part of the Red 5 network. check out red5network.com for all the show information on all the shows that are part of the Red 5 Network, which you actually mentioned a show that is part of the Red 5 Network earlier. Jedi Archives Podcast is part of the Red. They are part of the Red 5 Network. Red 5 also.
Awesome.
So check them out. If you're not able to watch us live every Wednesday, you can go to basically wherever fine podcasts are heard, Anchor.fm, Spotify. Just type in War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can find us there. So, with that being said, we hope you join us next week. And of course, as always, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Till the spires, everyone.